Hello YouTube family, I hope you all are doing good. Thank you so much for clicking to the video, and in today's video we'll be talking about ways by which you can get a really strong letter of recommendation, and by which you can, and through a strong letter of recommendation you can definitely increase your chances of getting into a dream school. Now dream school is a dream school, either it's Harvard or Stanford, so I'll be going through the tips on ways by which you can really get a strong letter of recommendation. Number one, the person whom you're asking for a letter of recommendation, like obviously it will be your professor, the professor whom you're asking for a letter of recommendation, just say the professor, hey professor, can you write me a passionate, like a really passionate and an enthusiastic letter of recommendation? And if the professor says yes, instantly if the professor says yes, then that's the professor you need to refer to. Like, if that professor is like willing to write a really good letter of recommendation for you, like extremely good, and if that professor really knows you well, then I think he's the best person to refer to. But if the professor says, oh, I don't have time, or you can look for someone else, or like if professor shows like, if the professor doesn't show any intent of writing you a really strong letter of recommendation, then say thank you so much professor, and I'll refer it back to you. I'll let you know, and like just be thankful and just get out of the office. That's the easiest thing you can do. Now, number two, many of you might be thinking that who's the best professor to refer to for letter of recommendation. Number one, the person whom you need to refer is the person who really knows you well. With knowing, I mean like the class in which you were among like 2%, among like above, like in top 1% or 2%, or have a really strong A in that class, really high A in the class. I think that's the professor you need to refer to, because definitely if you have an A in the class, you I assume that you would have gone to the office hours of the professor, and you would have emailed professor like multiple, or like through like at least 10 times in a semester. So I assume that you might have a good relationship with that professor. So under these conditions, I think that's a professor you need to refer to and ask for a letter of recommendation, and tell the professor that, professor, I am applying for this school, I need this letter of recommendation for that particular school, and that particular school is looking for these kind of students. So please, if you can, explain me as a person, explain me as a person who has contributed in your class and was actively willing to help others and has impacted the class positively. Like, that's what the schools are looking for. Yes, the schools are looking for the students who are really good academically, who are really stellar academically, like they have a 3.7 or a 3.8 GPA. But having said that, letter of recommendation are really an important part of the application process. And the thing which I really want to mention is the schools which review the application, whose application process is holistic. Those schools really give a preference to letter of recommendation. And if by chance, if by chance your professor writes something inappropriate about you in a letter of recommendation, then according to one of the admission officers of Ohio State University, because I read there, I was listening to them once, Ohio State University, he said that you don't have a chance of getting into a school if into their school, which I assume will be right for, I think it will be the same for other schools as well, but you don't have a chance of getting into school if a professor writes something inappropriate about you in letter of recommendation. And that makes sense. Like, one school who's getting somewhere around 50,000 application or 60,000 application, and they have like they have really, like, they have about 15,000 candidates whose scores are good, whose activities are on top, and they have like 3,000 applicants who have a perfect score, and their letter of recommendations are equally stellar. So do you think like they'll be choosing you, whose letter of recommendation has something inappropriate? Like, it's like common sense, guys. Like, no school wants a person whose professor is writing something inappropriate for that particular person in the letter of recommendation. So I personally think, and I personally suggest, that your letter of recommendation should be from the person who really knows you well. And the best thing and the best way a person can know you is that you've been going to the office hours, you've been participating in the activities, you've been talking to the professor, and your attendance was good, and like, you know professor really well. Whenever you see the professor, you were like, hey professor, how you doing? Like, when you get a chance to talk to the professor and interact with the professor, that kind of energy, so that's really important. Next thing which I really want to emphasize through this channel is that, let's see what we have. Yes, if you have a low score in one of your classes, let's say if you have a B in that class, and you think that the professor in whose class you've got a B knows you really very well, what should you do at that point? Now it's my suggestion, it's totally my perception, and it's my vista of thinking, it's what I'm thinking. I'll ask the professor to write in the letter of recommendation. Let's say if you get a B in English class, like for a person who's not a native speaker, who's not a whose primary language is not English, gets a B. Let's suppose if a person gets a B in an English class, and obviously he'll be sending those transcripts, and on those transcripts it will be written that the person got a B in English class. But if a professor can write that this person came into my class, and when he started initially he was an E grader, he did not even know, like, he was not very good at writing essays, he was not very good at communicating in English language, but by the end of semester he improved him or herself and jumped from an E grade to a B grade. Now that is a stellar letter of recommendation. This letter of recommendation will show me that yes, the person was a little bit disadvantaged, not a little bit, like fully disadvantaged as far as English class is concerned, and came from a country whose primary language is not English, and then he comes to a country whose native language is English, and whose primary way of communication is English language, and is getting a B from E. That person is getting a B. So this will show that this particular student has a caliber and believes in growth mindset and believes in improvement. So that will be a plus point. But this doesn't work every time. This theory or this formula might work for one person or or like for one person or for two people, but this might not work each time, or this might not work every time. So what I recommend is that try to get letter of recommendation from the classes in which you really scored high, or if you did not score high, then that teacher or that professor should be able to explain that why did you get this grade, or like what were your contributions, or from where were you when you started initially, and where were you when you ended up, and where you ended up in the class. So this is how you can get really cool letter of recommendation, and letter of recommendations are really very important. Now another important question, there may be many students who've been saying me that should they waive their right of letter of recommendation, or should they not waive their rights of having access to letter of recommendation. This comes after you are accepted to a school, because there is a right, I think I just forgot the name of that law. There was a law, let me see here. According to that law, you have a right to access to your academic documents. So the law is, yeah, the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. So through this act, you have a right to access all your documents once you enroll in the school where you applied. So let's say if you're talking about Stanford University, you applied to that school, and while you're applying you said, I don't want to access my letter of recommendations, and it's really a good thing. Now when you have said that you don't want, that you waive your right of accessing your letter of recommendation, the admission officer will be able to see it, the person who's writing a letter of recommendation will also be able to see it, and you won't be able to access your letter of recommendation when you get into school, and when you'll be looking at your documents, or when you'll be looking at your application file, or when you'll be looking at how much you score and how you got in. At that time you'll not be able to have access to a letter of recommendations. But if you say that I want to have access to my letter of recommendation, so once you get into the school, once you are the part of school, once you enroll into the school, you'll be able to see and access all the documents. But what I recommend is that you should waive your right of accessing to letter of recommendation. It is what I recommend, and I am recommending it. The video has already crossed 10 minutes, so let's be short. I'm only recommending it because sometimes the person who's recommending you is not able to write everything like from heart. That person is not able to express those feelings from heart about you. So you should waive your rights. You should waive your right to access the letters. Still, it depends upon you. It's your right, or it's like, the thing is what you think is better for you, right? So the video has crossed 11 minutes, I think 10 minutes and 27 seconds. So thank you so much for watching the video. Subscribe the channel, please subscribe the channel, because you're the part of our family, you're part of our YouTube family. Take care till the next time. Bye, see you. If you have any questions, leave it in comments. I'll get back to you as fast as I can. So take care. Bye, see ya. Bye.